Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Slightly different format on this video, but same basic content. I'm just not sitting in front of a desk today. But I've got a power station here that's kind of cool, I have to admit. I've actually been using it already for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 weeks. This is the ETaker M2000. And as the name kind of implies, it's a 2000 watt hour power station in terms of battery capacity. And that battery, by the way, is a semi-solid state lithium ion battery, rather than your standard lithium ion NMC type chemistry. And it also has an AC inverter that's capable of 2000 watts continuous rated pure sine wave output. And you can see here on the front, it's got a nice big LCD screen. It's got 2 kind of legacy, something like 12 watt type A USB ports. It's got 2 quick charge type A ports that are up to 60 watts, which is a pretty good output considering they're quick charge 3.0. Normally those are about 18 watts. And then you got a couple of type C down here, PD 100 watt ports down here for USB. Then over here on this side, you have got your solar input, which is XT60, and that is how you charge it. And it will take up to 1000 watts of solar. And that voltage range on that input is 18 volts up to 48 volts at up to 20 amps. So you do want to not exceed that 48 volt cap on this XT60 port. Then you got a couple of kind of DC 5521 accessory ports and your standard 12 volt 10 amp, actually this is a 12 amp car socket. And then down on the bottom you have got 3 20 amp AC ports that have 3 prongs, and then you've got 3 2 prongs, so total of 6 plugs. And you can, as you can see, just kind of slight press and hold any of these buttons here to turn these different outputs on and off. And then, by the way, this is aluminum housing, and it's got space on the bottom. I have to say, this feels very well built. This is not ABS plastic. This is aluminum housing. There's a nice rubber coating under the grip here. There's the logo on the side. And I have to say, I really like this heavy-duty metal housing. I think it's one of the few power stations I've seen with that kind of housing. And then you've got a nice widely diffused light here with multiple brightness levels and flashing and all that stuff. Things that probably most people never use, but I really like the widely diffused light. That's great on a picnic table or in a tent. And then you've got your AC charge port down here, a little reset breaker button. And then this, I believe, is so you can parallel connect 2 of these units together. I'm going to have to double check and make sure that I'm correct on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what that port is for, so that you can basically double your AC output. All right, in terms of cables, this thing comes with a solar cable MC4 on one end to XT60, as you would expect, since that is an XT60 port there. Comes with a charging cable for your car, so a standard car 12 volt plug to XT60, a little bit of a slow way to charge it. And then this will charge up to 1200 watts via AC, and it obviously does come with a power cord. So no charge brick, that's good. That trend, I think, has finally overtaken the industry, and you'd be hard pressed to find a new power station at this point that does use a charge brick. So that's cool. Integrated into the unit, all you need is a power cord. It charges it up to 1200 watts, which will get you a full charge in something like call it an hour and a half, approximately. Now, one thing they did send me, which I thought was interesting, if you saw my recent video on the EcoFlow version, this is kind of similar to that EcoFlow version, only the EcoFlow version only works with the EcoFlow Delta series of power stations. This would work with anything, virtually anything that handles the output voltage on this, but which would be most power stations. This has the ability to take an XT90 connector, which is what you connect to your car, and it does come with a cable for that. That's this big guy right here. So the XT90 is just a larger version of the XT60. It's got kind of small ring connectors, terminals on this for a battery connection, so you'd probably have to replace these for any kind of standard car battery or put some kind of an adapter to that. But then it does come with the connector for the XT60 output on the other side that goes to the M2000 on the input to charge that. Now the big difference here is the EcoFlow will go up to 800 watts. This tops out at 500 watts, but it will work with anything, not just an EcoFlow Delta. And I think it comes in at, I want to say $200 on Amazon. So it's a nice, again, aluminum housing. It's got some mounting holes, and just like the EcoFlow version, it does come with a little fuse end connector as well on the positive lead where it belongs. And then it's got some anti-abrasion kind of shielding. If you're running this through your fishing this through your car, you want to make sure you don't abrade the cable at all. You can run it through this. This kind of help keep that cable safe. All right, so enough talk. Let's get this thing out and run it through its paces, and we're going to find out how well it performs. Now, I don't as of yet have the price on this, but by the time the video is over, I should have this at the end. I'm still waiting on some feedback from the manufacturer. So I'll share that with you at the end of the video, and we'll find out in the meantime how well it actually performs, how well it lives up to its specs. So let's jump right in. All right, let's find out how much total harmonic distortion we get out of this AC inverter and how noisy it is and whether or not it might be suitable for a ham radio or a PA system kind of mobile application. So I've got here a crotchety old guitar amp without even a grounding pin, no noise suppression, no nothing. I currently have it plugged in here to grid power, and let's just get a baseline sense of how noisy it is on something that we know is relatively distortion free. So let's listen to it. All right, so slight hum, and if you watched any of my videos before on this particular thing, that should not be a surprise. All right, let's plug it into the AC inverter over here on the M2000 and find out if we get the same or worse kind of noise. All right, so I have the AC inverter already on. Let's listen to how it sounds now. All right, so I boosted the audio volume the same amount on both of those tests so you can get a fair relative sense. So I did hear, in person here, I did hear a little more noise off of this AC inverter. However, it's not dramatically more. So I would give this a partial pass. I think you could still get away with this as in an amp type of setting or use case. Maybe a ham radio, I'm not that completely sure. You might need a power conditioner if you're going to go that route. But I would say it is not perfectly clean or comparable to most grid power sources, just slightly noisier than that. So yeah, partial pass on the noise test. Okay, I've got the M2000 fully recharged at 100%. And we're going to do a DC capacity discharge test, usable capacity out of this DC port here, using the car cigarette lighter, which is typically a little bit less efficient than using one of these DC 5525 connectors here. But nevertheless, this is how I typically test these, so for fair comparison, we'll use the same one. And we're going to put about 10 amps on it and see if we can get that. All right, we are accumulating watt hours there, second up from the bottom. We'll check back when this thing is fully recharged, find out how many usable watt hours we got. All right, our DC usable capacity discharge test is done. Let me see if I can zoom in a little further here. And as you can see, we got a total of 1,652 watt hours. Now that's out of a rated 2,008 watt hours. So that gives us a respectable average 82%. So anything between 80 and 84% I would consider average. So this is right in the middle, average. Let's get this thing fully charged back up, and we're going to rerun the test out of the AC inverter and find out how much usable capacity we get through the AC outputs. All right, let's do an AC discharge capacity test on this M2000. I think I'll use this side just to give me a little bit more space so I can still see the display. I'm going to use my my Wave 2 heat pump, air conditioning heat pump, to do this. And let's go ahead and turn on the AC inverter. And the first thing we're going to check is to see what kind of voltage we're getting out of that. Here we go. And we are getting 120 volts. So that is excellent. So let me go ahead and put this on watt hours or kilowatt hours here. And go ahead and turn the air conditioner on. Now this particular air conditioner has a pretty soft start, so it's not going to have the hefty spike that a window air conditioner or a floor air conditioner typically would have. And well, if you can make that out in the back, let's go ahead and flip over here. We're not really pulling a very large load as of yet. So it's ticking up there north of 200 watts. It's going to pretty much stay in that neighborhood right there, just north of 200 watts. That's how it runs typically. Pretty efficient air conditioner. And we are tallying up the watt hours. So we'll check back and we'll find out how many out of that rated 2008 watt hours we can actually get through the AC inverter running this air conditioner. Okay, looks like our AC discharge capacity test is done. The air conditioner is turned off. We're at 0%. Let me put this into grid power here and find out how we did. Oh, that's a pretty decent number. That's 1,810 watt hours out of a rated 2008. So that equates to actually an excellent number of just a little over 90% of rated capacity. That puts this well above average in the AC inverter output category in terms of usable battery capacity through that AC inverter. So very good numbers on this ETaker M2000. All right, since we have to charge this thing up, now would be a good time to give the unattended solar test a shot. So I have got the solar cable that this comes with the MC4 connectors on one side and the XC60 on the other. It's a nice long cable and a nice heavy gauge. I will say that it's about a 2-meter cable. So I'm going to plug this into my 800 watt solar array. And I do have to be careful, even though this thing can take, according to the specs, up to 1,000 watts of solar input, you cannot exceed 48 volts. In fact, the voltage range on this is 18 volts to 48 volts at up to 20 amps. So I have my 800 watt solar array, which is 4 200 watt Bouge RV panels. I have it split into 2 series strings, which will give me a maximum output voltage from each one of those strings of about 44 volts max. But that is underneath the 48 volt max here, so we should be safe doing that. And then I have those 2 strings combined in parallel. So the short circuit current rating on those panels is 12 amps. So that would get me roughly double of, call it 24 amps, but it'll probably be something less than that. It really depends on the intensity of the sun. But again, the charge controller here maxes out at 20 amps anyway, so I'm never going to get more than 20 amps. But let's find out if 800 watts of solar configured in that 2S, 2P configuration is going to be enough to charge the thing off in a full day if we get decent sun tomorrow. And then let's find out, in addition to that, more importantly probably, whether or not this thing will wake up and charge itself in the morning when solar starts coming online, or whether or not we have to come in and maybe turn it on or unplug and replug something. So that's the typical solar test. Let me get it connected here and we'll get it going. All right, solar connector for the input is right here on the front. Input, and it does give you the, this actually says 12 to 50 volts, interestingly. The manual says 18 to 48. So I'm going to err on the side of caution that the 48 volt number in the manual is the safer number of the two. But it's probably good up to 50 volts, just, you know, FYI. So let me go ahead and plug the XT60 connector in, and I will enable the disconnect here. So I have solar power. Now we're not going to get any actual input here because it's about 10 o'clock at night. So let's check back in the morning and see if this thing is trying to charge itself or not. All right, it is about 8 o'clock in the morning. We have sun just now hitting the panels. So I got here at just the right time. And we're just, since we're not anywhere close to being properly aligned with the solar panels, we got a pretty low input, 54 watts, but we have already charged to 1%. So it did automatically start charging on its own, which is the key deliverable. And we're going to leave this plugged in and kind of see how it does throughout the day. So we'll check back later in the afternoon maybe and just kind of see what kind of state of charge we're at. But as far as unattended solar charging resumption in the morning, definitely passed that test. And just real quick here, wanted to give you a quick clip of it charging at 562 watts. So I think that is about the peak, probably, that I've seen it so far. Pretty good stuff. All right, so the M2000 does not have variable speed charging, at least for AC charging. So there's no app control, there's no way to change that. So when you plug in AC charging, for example, let me go ahead and do that. You'll top out at a max of 1200 watts. And what we're gonna see here is we'll probably get something just slightly under that, which is typical. So there's 1200 right there. Yeah, and it settles down to 1.18 or 1180 watts, more or less. All right, so can this dual charge? So can we charge it off of the AC power cable and off of DC at the same time? So let's find out if we can do that. A lot of people ask that question. It's not a use case that I'm particularly interested in, but since people ask the question if you can do that, let's find out. So I've got about 800 watts of solar connected. Let me go ahead and turn that on, and we'll see if this number jumps up at all. You can see it's detected the solar connection right there, little icon. And now we have just gone above, 1.3 or 1300 watts, 1500 watts. It's going to be variable because the pretty cloudy skies out right now. A lot of big white puffy clouds, a lot of storms move through. So we're getting kind of a intermittent sun. Yeah, but you saw it go up to 1500 watts at one point. So it does appear that we can dual charge this thing via DC and AC at the same time. So dual charging is a pass. All right, so what is this ETaker Fleet 1000 vehicle mounted fast charger anyway? What does it do? Well, normally when you charge this from your car, you're using that little standard cigarette lighter adapter, and you're only going to get between 100, maybe 120 watts maximum of the charge rate. And for something that's in that 2000 watt hour range, it's going to take a very, very long time charging in your car off your car's battery. And typically you want to make sure your car is running if you are charging that way, or you run the risk of maybe running your car battery all the way down. Well, something like this allows you to connect this to your car battery and then run either off of solar and your car, or just the car if you want. Apparently this one allows you to do both. And effectively you can get anywhere from 300 to 500 watts, as it says right there, of charge because your car's alternator is actually supplying some extra power to allow you to charge at a faster rate than you would just using a standard 12 volt 10 amp car socket to do the charging. So let's hook this up and kind of see how it works in reality. I'm going to connect it to my 12 volt solar system just to kind of simulate connecting it to a car battery with an alternator. But it won't be quite the same, but it'll be almost the same. And but before I can do that, I think I mentioned this before, the ring terminals on these connectors are very small. They are not going to accommodate your typical M8 size bolts that you typically encounter on a 12 volt battery. So we're going to have to cut these off and re-terminate these wires with something that I can actually connect to my bus bar, which uses the same size bolts as most of your 12 volt batteries would use. So yeah, anyway, let's do that first, and then we'll get it all set up and show you how it works. All right, just to kind of dial this in a little bit more, you can see these are really small. This is about a 1/4 inch opening. So these are 8 gauge wire. So what you need is a ring terminal that is suitable for 8 gauge wire, and what you want is about a 5/16 opening instead of a 1/4 inch opening. So here I have a 6 gauge terminal with a 5/16 opening. You can see the difference in size on those diameters. So this is appropriate for what I need, except that this is specifically for a 6 gauge wire. So I need to have an 8 gauge wire terminal. Hopefully I've got those, but that's what I want. Something with a 5/16 ring terminal diameter and accommodating an 8 gauge cable. All right, so the big XT90 cable here, I've re-terminated the ends on that to fit my bus bar connections here, and I have it connected now to the positive and negative sides of my 12 volt system. So it is essentially like connecting it to a car battery at this point. I am not putting in any solar at the moment, and you can see here on the end, I'll try to zoom in and give you a shot of that, but this does give you a 300 watt, 400 watt, and 500 watt mode. So I've got it set at 300 watts right now, and I did measure the output on the XT60 cable terminals with my multimeter, and I'm getting about 42 volts approximately. So that's pretty good. I mean, that's way more than you're going to get out of your 12 volt, obviously, car adapter. But let's plug this in and see what we get. So we'll keep an eye on the input side here where it currently says 0 watts. And we are now pulling in 341 volts. Now that's going to charge 3.5 times faster than if you were to charge this off your standard 12 volt car socket adapter. Now I think we can probably switch modes here. I haven't actually tried this. Maybe I have to press and hold. There we go. Once it's flashing, that should get us up to over 400 watts. Let's see if it'll do that. 440 watts is what we're actually inputting. So you can control that range in here, which is nice. Now there's no app to the F1000 here, but press and hold until it flashes, looks like, and then move it over. Now let's see if we get over 500 watts. And we are now getting 530 watts. So that is going to allow us to top this thing off on the road using this from your car charger in something like, call it 4 hours rather than 10 hours. So that's what this little device does. And you can notice here it's got a solar port on it. You can actually input solar on this. So if you have this in a van or an RV where you have solar on the roof, you can input solar on this and provide solar input as well. All right, now I've got my small 800 watt solar array connected to this, and it is pulling a 2S 2P configuration, which should put me in the 42 volt range. And this does have a maximum 48 volt input, so I should be totally fine. I'm going to plug that in there, and let's just watch over here and see if anything happens, or if we are topping out at 500 watts no matter what. We're adding another 150 watts. So it does allow you to DC charge off of the alternator car battery combo plus solar, and it does give you the faster charging capability. This will handle up to 1,000 watts in. So very good charging performance options for this ETaker M2000, especially if you add this F1000 DC charging module into the mix. Wow, so we're right at 1,000 watts. This is very impressive. So I like the fact that you can actually dial this down and maybe put less of a burden on your alternator by maybe only charging 300 watts off the alternator part on the car battery, and then the rest you can do to solar. So if I'm not sure if I can do this while, yeah, I can. So let me go ahead and set this to 300 watts, turn my 12 volt system back on, which again would be like driving around in your car, connected it with your car battery. And let's watch and see what happens here. So now we're getting solar plus 300 watts added to by the car alternator. And you can see we're getting 900 watts of charge. That would allow me to top this whole thing off in just about 2.5 hours of drive time, which is really excellent. So I love that they have this little option here for this ETaker M2000. All right, so let's wrap up by recapping kind of what you're getting and what you're not getting with this M2000 from ETaker. So this unit is surprisingly compact and relatively lightweight at just 38 pounds, and that's despite its 2,000 watt-hour capacity. I mean, seriously, when you look at this thing, you see what the dimensions are. It's literally only about 20% bigger than most units with just half this amount of capacity. And that is mostly due to the fact that it uses that semi-solid state chemistry, which is also one of the safest battery options available right now. The rugged aluminum housing is a really nice alternative to that more common ABS plastic that you'll find on most of its competitors. It can be fully recharged quickly via AC up to 1,800 watts of input, or very quickly via solar with up to 1,000 watts of input. And then there's this Fleet 1000 DC to DC charger that will get you basically fully charged in about 2 hours if you were to combine both the 500 watts that you can get out of the car alternator connection plus the solar input that it also allows you to combine. And by the way, this Fleet 1000 DC fast charger is actually priced at a very reasonable $199 on Amazon US, and it can actually charge pretty much any power station that can handle up to 50 volts of DC input, since it uses a very common easy to adapt to XT60 output connector. Now, I have seen a few comments on my last DC to DC charger video that seem to be expressing some concern about the extra wear and tear on your car's alternator, and I think that's a valid concern to some degree. And I don't claim to be an expert on this particular charging method, But I have done a fair amount of investigating on that particular concern, and the industry consensus seems to be that as long as your car's alternator has a max output current rating of at least 2 times the max current rating on the DC charger, you should be perfectly fine with a setup with something like this. And this particular Fleet 1000 fast charger pulls a max of about 40 amps on the car input side. So you just want to make sure that your car's alternator is rated for at least 80 amps or more. And I think especially on the SUVs, anything bigger than an SUV on up is definitely going to be able to handle 80 amps or more as far as the alternator is concerned. But getting back to the M2000, it did successfully live up to all of the specs testing, as you saw, but it had only maybe a partial pass, I think is what I said, on that AC power harmonic distortion test. So it might not be the best choice if you're going to use it for ham radio applications or audio amplification type use cases. And as I think I briefly mentioned earlier, it does have the ability to be connected to a second M2000. So you can connect 2 of them together with ETaker's optional merge box. ET200, I think, is the model on that. And that will give you 240 volt split phase output. And that's where you connect those things in the back there. And that would be handy if you wanted to integrate this into kind of a basic home backup power solution. So what don't you get with this unit? Well, there's no mobile app control. There's no physical switch that would allow you to enable a variable charge rate. So you're going to get that basically that 1800 watt AC charging whether you want it or not. There's also no wireless phone charging and no battery expansion option unless you count connecting 2 of these together to get 240 volt split phase. That is sort of an expansion option. But beyond those couple of things, it's got what I suspect most people are looking for in a portable power station. So the big question is, how much does it cost? Well, the price on Amazon US right now is $12.39, which puts that in a fairly crowded and competitive 60 to 65 cents per watt hour category. And from my perspective, I do think that the rugged build quality with this aluminum housing and that 3-year warranty that this unit has make this a pretty compelling option if you're looking for something in that 2000 watt hour capacity range that's not crazy heavy and not very bulky. It takes up kind of the minimal amount of space that you could expect for something in this capacity class, especially if you don't happen to care about things like wireless app control or wireless charging or expansion battery options. It does just seem to be a rock solid unit, kind of with all of the essential features that you'd want, and at a price that kind of falls pretty much right in the middle between the big name brands and the budget brands for similarly spec'd units. And if you're interested in checking this particular one out, per usual, I will leave links in the video description below. And do keep in mind that pricing can and does change often, but that $12.39 price that I mentioned before is where this unit is currently sitting at the time that I'm posting the video. Okay, I think that's a wrap. I do hope you found at least something helpful in the video. If you did, please consider clicking that like button for me. I'd very much appreciate that. Maybe consider subscribing if you're not already a subscriber. I do offer my sincere thanks for stopping by and watching this video with me, and I do hope you'll consider joining me for the next one. I got a lot of cool things in the queue coming up in the next really couple, 3-4 weeks. But until then, have fun out there.